Starting on my far left, in your case, your far right. Kathy Landock is the stenographer. Then we have Kara Sheridan, who's the secretary. Lauren Anderson, who's the vice chairman. Chris Volz, who's solicitor, and he's from the firm Tucker Ahrensberg. And Liz Ross, who's the zoning director. If anyone who plans to make a variance request presentation or who plans to give testimony, would you please stand to be sworn in?
Raise your right hand, please. I swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you. I'd look for a motion for approval of the minutes from June 20th, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 20th, 2022.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have one item of old business, and that's application number 2022-0011, Joe Slovic, and that's property located 618 Muse Bishop Road in McDonald. Basically, a request for variances to conditions of approval and shared parking. If Mr. Slovic and/or his representative would come forward, please. And if you identify yourself by name and address, it would be appreciated.
My name's Joe Slovic, 9 Roseanne Street, McDonald, PA. I'm basically looking for approval. We had Bunny's Tavern in our family for 61 years, and we recently closed. And I'd like to make 4 apartment units in the building. So that's what I'm looking for. The one question is the shared parking. I have 4 garages on the property with stacked parking. That would be 8 spots. If I could find 2 more spots illegally on my lot, I don't know why I even have to worry about the shared parking. That was my, one of my concerns. So, basically. Carry on with you.
No, because that's not. Was the discussion that after last month's meeting, you wished to seek variance to the conditions of the approval, which stated about the landscaping and the sidewalks and the shared parking. And I thought that's what we were going to address this evening and talk about the existing conditions and the hardship of not being able to meet those conditions based on last month's approval.
Right, so it would just,
And he wanted to point out the few wording discrepancies in the approval regarding the physical setup of the apartment building itself. So that's
Okay.
what's here. I do not
okay,
have
that's
a
fine,
copy of it.
that's fine. So the
What's your
existing.
name, sir?
Pardon?
Name and
Oh,
address,
sorry.
please.
Kerry Kreider from HMT and Associates. So the existing bar, as everybody knew, it had 2 apartments upstairs, and then the bar was downstairs. So the goal was to have 4 apartments downstairs, 4 one-bedroom apartments downstairs. The existing garage in the back is split between 2 different properties. Mr. Slovic owns both of them, but the garage is partly on one and partly on another. So with that, the garage there is enough parking, but part of the garage is on the other lot. So if we can put, there's 6 there, correct, that are on, that are in that existing garage, to get another space on ours, or can we use the whole garage as the parking for that unit?
I guess I have a question. So one thing that you mentioned, Mr. Slavic, was that you have ample additional area of parking that's not under the garage that would be able to accommodate the additional spaces that are needed, correct? I mean, and to your point, if you have that, you don't necessarily need a reciprocal agreement between that and the adjacent duplex. So, I mean, if that's what you're requesting, I don't see any problem with that per se. And, you know, I only speak for myself. I'd look to the other two board members to make comment. But if you're saying that you can accommodate, and from what I can tell looking at the property, it looks like you would be able, I mean, it used to be a bar, you had a bartender, and I'm sure more than 3 people showed up there and, you know, at a time. And then in addition to the residents that you had upstairs, you had ample parking on that piece of property. So to me, I would rather not grant some reciprocal agreement as long as you can accommodate the people that are going to be resident in those apartment buildings. To me, that would be adequate. I'd ask for any other questions from the other board members, but to me, that makes sense.
And I think to kind of concentrate on the direction which we had, whether it's to approve the parking in the garage, or it looks like from the photograph that you provided that there would be, as Kara referred to, adequate space. And I think in either case, you're saying that there isn't room for landscaping or sidewalks, but it looks like there, let's assume that this would be a parking area, that there could be some landscaping, very limited. I would agree with you on the likelihood, decision yet to be made, but very limited room for sidewalk. Or if the garage is a direction that we would head and we would approve, then it would seem to make sense to not leave this in the condition it's in, but to do some general landscaping, whether it's grass or whatever the case might be. I'd be curious to, I think we'd all be curious to get your feedback on both of those positions as far as how you would address it.
Yep.
So
Well, the one question was, the buffer between the properties, if you're facing the bar, it'd be to the left, there's a house back there.
Yes.
And there's a garage and a house back there.
Yes.
And I think the letter said something about 8-foot landscaping. And if I do that, then I'm gonna eliminate 2 of my garages that's on that side of the building, facing that. It's gonna limit me in that condition. If the 2 of the garages face that house, there's 2 face the main road and 2 face the house next to us. If I put an 8-foot buffer in there, then I'm gonna lose the parking and the access to them two garages.
Okay, and I think that's pretty well demonstrated by this
Yeah.
photograph here.
And then actually my neighbor who parks his car there, it would completely throw him, off too. His,
Right.
Way we've been operating for the last 60 years, so.
Other questions of the board?
Just back to the parking, and I tend to agree with finding some way to have each property have their own dedicated spots. I think that makes it easier. So if there was a way that you could, inclusive of the garage spots that you have on the apartment side of the piece of property that's going to have the apartments, stripe off a couple of extra spaces as dedicated spaces. That would be my recommendation to do that. And then to Tom's point, I guess you're right. You probably wouldn't be able to fit an 8-foot landscape buffer in there, but I'm just curious if there's a way you could dress it up a little bit with some greenery around there to.
And like I said, if you're familiar with the area.
Yeah.
My neighbor parks, he has a parking pad right there. Technically, the parking pad is probably partly on my property. So if I do anything in that area, it's gonna limit him, force him to park his vehicle somewhere else too. I mean, we're close friends, neighbors for years. I don't wanna, put him out if I don't have to.
But I think our sensitivity is that's a huge amount of space, and even with providing him thoroughfare to park his car, something could be done with that area as far as making it clean and green.
And that's between my 2 buildings.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, you guys are talking about opposite sides of the
Yeah.
building.
okay.
I'm talking about if you're facing the front of the bar, to the left, the Cecil Used Auto is right there in the front.
Right.
And right behind them is a house.
Okay,
and he parks his car basically right on the property line. And if I put any kind of greenery in there, that would be a deterrent to him too.
okay,
And it would limit me to get into them 2 garages
right.
that go sideways.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I get that. I guess I was talking about the big swath in between
Right,
the
and
two
that
properties.
There's probably no problem with doing something there if we,
Yeah.
you know, if we have to, we can probably do something, you know, there.
Yeah, and I get why, there's no, I mean, I've driven that area, there's no sidewalk anywhere around or on either side of
Right.
the street, so I understand that. I think the cleanest thing is to dedicate spaces on both properties so that if for whatever reason you sell one of the properties, that there's dedicated parking for the people that will live on the other property.
Right. And then the other question, the last letter, it basically approved them as garden apartments. From what my understanding is, you know, I need one entry in and 4 doors on the inside. That won't be feasible. I wanted 4 individual apartments with their own 4 doors coming out. You know, I don't want to, maybe a deck or a step facing the other property, my own property. So I'd like to clarify that too.
So you're saying that when you develop the first floor into the 4 apartments, they'll have dedicated access from the outside
Right,
into
each
their
one will
apartment?
have their own entry from the
Okay.
outside.
Yeah, that was not well understood.
Right.
Yeah, in fact,
Because
the
from-
opposite was stated.
Yeah, from what I was told in the beginning, that I can do garden apartments there without, that was, you know, that was basically the way it's zoned now. But that won't be feasible for me. So I wanted,
I guess the reason that it was, at the time, seemed acceptable was that garden apartments are allowed in that zoning
Right.
district. Because you were only talking about renovating the first story, that would seem, you know, acceptable that that was a garden apartment. The way that the ordinance reads is it very much ties this into this concept, and I'm not saying I think it's right or wrong, I'm just saying it very much ties this into the concept of a single entry door. So if you were having a single entry door and then access to 4 apartments within, that would be acceptable as a garden apartment. Even though the second story had its own separate entries, that's, to me, grandfathered in and previously existing. So I don't, this is something that I noticed in the rewriting that, you know, wasn't the case the last time that we reviewed this. So we'd have to, probably, we have to think about that for a second, but it's not, part of the reason that it was okay when it was approved originally was because of the single entrance, right?
Right.
Just the way the wording stands with the garden apartment.
yeah,
That
and there was some confusion there. I was out of town. I couldn't be here, but yeah, that's the main reason for the last meeting was that that's not feasible for me. So, I was seeking to have 4 separate entrances.
Anything to add, Liz?
So that's actually, if you scroll down to the next couple pages in this, in the PDF, you'll see the letter. So right there, go back up a little bit. Right there was the first item. It said, replace it with an apartment containing 6 one-bedroom units. And it was really to be 4 one-bedroom units and 2 two-bedroom units. And then going.
or just a quick question on that. Are the
Yes.
2 two-bedroom units the ones that are already upstairs?
Existing, yeah.
Correct.
So really, we're not talking about adding additional, you know, really the additional is 4 additional bedrooms, really, pretty much we're talking about. Okay.
Correct. And then on the next page, items number 12 and 13 were what we wanted to address. Number 12, it says the 4 one-bedroom apartments and a central hallway. And as Mr. Slovic explained, yeah, can you scroll down to page 4, please? There, number 12, that's the all-private entrances. And number 13 is just, again, talking about the upstairs as 2 bedrooms. And then we had discussed, you know, the landscaping and the sidewalks and the shared parking. And then the last thing was my interpretation I wanted to make clear after last meeting. As you guys know, I also could not attend because of a family emergency, and there was some discrepancy over the definitions and whether it was residential. So I wanted to be sure to everyone, to give a determination that by definition, the two buildings were residential, and that impacted the shared parking. But that's all I got.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the audience? If not, I would entertain a motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to grant the request to revise the prior approval with respect to the 4 one-bedroom apartments having their own private entrance per the markup that we're looking at on the screen. I'll make a recommendation that instead of removing or having a shared parking agreement, that the applicant should dedicate spaces on each property for each apartment to make it cleaner. Approve the variance not requiring sidewalks. And then I would ask for the landscaping piece, although it's not going to be in conformance with the section 615D, that there be some effort to put some landscaping in between the two structures that you own to green it up and to create a buffer area. I know that's a lot there, but.
Is council comfortable with the wording?
So, just to make sure I have it right, we are going to grant the request that it not be a garden apartment on the first floor, that each 4 units has separate outside entrances. Applicant is no longer seeking permission to park in that garage or to share that garage for both units. Instead, he's going to dedicate parking for each lot. And we will strike the 608B sidewalks condition and strike the 615D landscaping condition, but condition approval on some landscaping being done to the property.
Is there a second to that?
Can I ask a question first?
Please.
So does that mean that the wording on it being approved as a garden apartment is going to be removed? Isn't there something else we have to specify then, since an apartment is not allowed? Is it a multifamily dwelling or something else? And is that permitted in the zoning district? Because I don't, if it's not a garden apartment and it's not an apartment, and it needs to be something, right? It needs to be something that we're approving it to be that is allowed in that zone, correct?
So last month, he applied for a special exception for being an unlisted use that was close to an existing use. And we approved him as an apartment, in part because it was very similar to what he was doing as a garden apartment. My understanding of the motion proposed, that stays the same, even without the requirement that the first floor be a garden apartment. So his prior approval as a special exception for being something not listed in the zoning code still stands. Only we have pulled back on some of the understanding as to what.
Okay, so when we made the approval as such, we didn't say because it's close to a garden apartment, because that wouldn't be valid anymore. As far as I understand it, the specification of garden apartment requires that single entrance. So without that being the case, don't we have to say it's more like now a similar use, like a duplex or something? But it's a, whatever a 5 is, a 5-plex.
So from a zoning perspective, by the township ordinance definition, this is a multifamily dwelling, which is defined as a residential building containing 3 or more dwelling units, including triplexes, 4plexes, garden apartments, high-rise apartments, and townhouses.
Okay, so
I would consider it
we could cover it under multifamily dwelling. Okay,
is my interpretation.
okay.
Is there a second to Mr. Anderson's motion with council's revisions to language?
Yeah, I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
That concludes old business. We have two items of new business. Application number 2022-0012, First Choice, Inc., located on West End Drive in McDonald, and they are asking for a special exemption for expansion of non-conforming use. Would the representatives of First Choice please come forward? And if you would be so kind as to identify yourself by name and address.
My name is Michael Pugliano, and our current address is 826 Chartiers Avenue, McKees Rocks. And I'm here today about a property that we purchased.
Spell your last name for me, please.
P as in Paul, Ugliano.
It's all in there.
Yeah.
If you want to scroll down.
Okay. So I'm here today because a building that we purchased towards the beginning of the year, there was a little bit of back and forth. We were under the impression it was already a commercial building. We found out 3 days before closing it was not. And we found out about this non-conforming use that was with the previous owner. Our real estate agent had filled out the paperwork for it to be transferred over, and it was accepted. So one of the provisions for us buying the building was the previous owner had to file with Cecil to change the zoning to commercial, which it was denied. But the non-conforming use was still intact. Recently, there was a side structure on this building that had severe damage to it, and part of the roof came down. I later found out that this was never filed for permit-wise by the previous owner. So that's why I'm here today, because it is 20 foot out further than what any documented item previously had. So I believe that it would be an expansion of the non-conforming use for the building.
Questions?
Can we hear from Gretchen first?
Please. I think counsel for the township would also like to make comment and/or pose questions to you.
Thank you, members of the board and solicitor. I have some exhibit binders for each of you.
Thank you.
And members of the board, my name is Gretchen Moore. I'm a solicitor for the township. And on behalf of the township, we do oppose this request. And I have some questions and some exhibits for you all, as well as some argument after that is over. So if you're okay, I'll proceed with some questions for the witness.
Please.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, do you mind if I sit here? I'm kind of spread out.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pugliano, you could step up to the mic so we're both on mic. That would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Pugliano, you're the operations manager for the company, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. Do you have an ownership interest in the company?
yes,
And on behalf of First Choice Plumbing and Heating and Cooling, you actually applied for the continuation of the non-conforming use in November of 2021, correct?
I'm not sure of the date. I just know when it was accepted. Our real estate agent filled most of it out, and I just signed it. I don't know the date.
Okay, well, we can take a look at it so that it's clear for everyone. That application is attached as Exhibit A in your binder. So if you could take a look at that. And just let me know if that's a true and correct copy of the application on behalf of First Choice Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, the November 2021 application.
And I note that on page 8, it has 11/29/2021.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a true and correct exhibit. That's your application that was submitted in November 2021 for the continuation of the pre-existing non-conforming use.
I mean, I assume, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the statements that were made in there on behalf of the company, I mean, let's just be clear, you signed this application, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the statements you made on behalf of the company are true and accurate, correct?
As I said, I would assume. I thought that this was just mirrored off of the previous one that was already in place.
Okay, but to the best of your knowledge and understanding, the statements you were making on behalf of the company were true and accurate. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. And you attached some pictures in that application. They're pictures from the real estate listing, I believe, and those pictures are true and accurate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And the Cecil Township Zoning Hearing Board made a decision in that matter, is that correct?
To not approve the commercial of the C1 zoning?
No, the Cecil Township Zoning Hearing Board made a decision in the application that we're looking at right now. They actually decided that matter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And no one appealed that decision, is that correct?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. And a copy of that decision is Exhibit B. If we could just take a look at Exhibit B.
And that's a letter from Christopher Volt's counsel for the zoning hearing board dated December 21st, 2021.
That's correct. And I'm just asking you, Mr. Pugliani, if that letter is the decision that you received after you submitted your application and had your hearing before the zoning hearing board.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that letter in particular specifically states that the board approved the application for recognition of a pre-existing non-conforming use as filed by the applicant First Choice Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, and permit the property to be used for, quote, internal warehouse storage of HVAC and plumbing supplies and equipment, because the pre-existing non-conforming use of internal storage exists at the property, that use has not been abandoned, and that the proposed use by the applicant is in keeping with the current owner's pre-existing non-conforming use. You see that in the letter there? It's on the third page.
Yes.
Okay. And you agree that the zoning hearing board limited the use there to storage and warehouse use, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you sent a letter to the zoning hearing board around the same time as your current application, the application for which we're here tonight, and that's Exhibit C. If you could just identify Exhibit C for me.
Okay.
Is that
You're
your,
saying on page 4, correct?
yes, we're looking at Exhibit C. It's a one-page letter.
Yeah.
And I'd just like you to confirm, this is your July 1, 2022 letter, signed by you, directed to the Cecil Township Zoning Hearing Board.
Yes.
Okay. And the last sentence in paragraph 2 of that letter says, after receiving the exception paperwork from Cecil Township, the exception clearly states that the building is only to be used for storage and warehouse. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you agree with that statement, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in part, from what I've read, why you're here tonight is to actually add a use as well as expand the building. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the same as from day one when we asked for different zoning to be able to operate our business out of there.
Okay, and when you say operate your business, you mean in addition to storage and warehousing, you would now like to add the use of having an actual commercial office at that location. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That is something that you are seeking tonight from this board, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to a little bit of the history on this property. When you applied in November 2021, you told this board in your cover letter that you were requesting the special exception to store materials and equipment until you had an opportunity to seek a rezoning of the property so that you could have a more full commercial activity at that property. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, and then you did go to the Board of Supervisors for Cecil Township, and you sought to rezone the property to a commercial zoning.
I personally did not.
Okay.
But as a company, yes, we did.
Okay, thank you. And to be clear, the company is R3, right? It's zoned R3?
Yes.
Okay, and you sought to have it zoned commercial?
Yes.
Okay, and the Township Board of Supervisors declined to rezone that property, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so now you're back here before this board to get an expansion and add the use of office space on this particular parcel?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, historically, when your company came in November 2021 to seek the continuation of the non-conforming use, that was not the first time that that issue was before the zoning hearing board, the status of that property. Is that fair?
From our company?
Not from your company,
I
sir.
can't speak about what other companies did.
Okay, well, in your application, you actually included findings of fact from the previous owners. They sought to seek warehouse and storage on the property, and you actually included that in your application. Do you recall that?
I'm going to say yes, I did not prepare any of this.
Okay.
A real estate agent did. You can see in the exhibit, she wrote the check for it also. So I'm not 100% sure what happened in that back and forth, but I do know that we were granted the special exception that the previous owner had. He ran a landscaping business out of there, but it was granted to allow him to store and I think just basically treat it as a warehouse. But in fact, it was ran as a company.
Okay, and let's take a look at that previous approval. For the record, it is within Exhibit A on page 50. Okay. And not to belabor the point or go through this in a lot of detail with the board, I'm just going to point to a couple places in that record where it describes the use that was approved previously in 2004, and you can review the actual documentation. I will just direct your attention to page 54, where it states that the applicant maintains that at the time the Cecil Township ordinance became effective and continuing to the present, the property and the garage thereon have been used as maintenance and storage facility for a trucking business. Page 55, Mr. Gaglia Jr., the previous owner on this property, provided evidence that his use would be in keeping with the pre-existing non-conforming nature of the property, i.e. storage. Page 56, based on the evidence received in the record, the board finds that the pre-existing non-conforming use existed for storage in the facility located at West End Drive. And again, on page 55, it makes reference to approval for storing and maintaining equipment. And I will also direct your attention to page 60, which is a separate letter that was sent from the solicitor for the zoning hearing board in 2004 to the applicant. And in that letter, and you can read it at your leisure, it states that the buyer proposed to use the garage on the property to store and maintain equipment for a residential landscape business. This use is in keeping with the existing non-conforming use as a maintenance and storage facility.
Those various references are so noted.
Thank you. Mr. Pugliana, you currently use the premises to store and maintain, store and warehouse, I should say, HVAC equipment. Is that accurate?
We store plumbing materials there, and we have our equipment there.
Are you conducting any other activities on the property?
Currently, no.
No kind of fabrication or other services at that property?
No.
Okay. What are the current hours of operation?
There are no standard hours of operation. We need materials because we moved everything to this location from our other location. Material orders will be filled and shipped out to a job. So we don't have anything. I mean, nobody's ever been there probably before 6:30 in the morning, and nobody's ever there past 2:30 in the afternoon.
Currently, how often do your employees access the property?
There's only two of us that do,
Okay.
myself and the other manager. That's exactly the way we ran our other business. Guys don't come into the shop.
Okay, and how often do you and the other employee access the property currently?
Once a day.
And customers currently don't travel to this location, correct?
We do not have that type of business.
Okay, thank you. So what you're seeking from this board is to add an office. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. With 3 full-time employees?
That includes myself and the other manager and a secretary.
Okay. What kind of additional traffic would result from the expansion to add an office at this location?
1 car a day.
Per employee?
No, currently, myself and the manager drive there. It would be 1 additional vehicle per day, which would be our secretary.
Okay. Do you drive there to work out of an office there, or do you just drive there as needed currently?
Drive there as needed
Okay.
for warehousing.
Okay. Will there be any change? Will you have regular hours of operation if you had an office there?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
And what would those be?
8 to 4.
Any other impacts you foresee from adding an office to this location? Any office events, meetings?
No,
Would customers ever come to this site?
no.
Now, you have a full-scale office in operation in McKees Rocks, is that correct?
The same as what I'm asking you for.
Okay, but the location
Yes.
in McKees Rocks is current, and it's an existing full-scale operation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there are 12 employees approximately at that site?
Field guys, we have 14.
14?
Yeah, field guys. I think we're getting kind of lost here, what we have and what we would be expecting at this building. We have 3 office personnel.
Understood. So you have 3 office personnel. They're currently working out of the McKees Rocks location.
Yes,
Understood. And then you have 14 field employees.
yes.
Okay. And at the McKees Rocks location, what is located there?
Currently, office equipment, and 3 employees.
Any warehousing at that location?
It's all at this new location.
So currently, at the McKees Rocks location, there is only office space. Is that fair?
Yes,
And you moved your warehousing from McKees Rocks to Cecil?
yes.
Okay. Are there plans to close that McKees Rocks location?
That's the outcome of this. But yes,
Okay, so the goal for the company is to cease operations in McKees Rocks, and you want to move your entire facility to this location here in Cecil Township?
correct.
Do you currently have a lease at McKees Rocks?
No, we own the building.
Okay. Is it currently for sale?
No,
Okay. And if you move the entire operation, your entire operation here to Cecil Township, you would then close the operation in McKees Rocks, sell the building, or keep it? Is that fair?
yes.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Pugliano, I'm sorry about that. I have some questions about what you were calling the repair to the building?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we could take a look at Exhibit D. Is Exhibit D a copy of your current application to the Zoning Hearing Board?
I'm sorry, what page is that?
There's little tabs on the side. It's Exhibit D. It's a one-page application.
Sorry about that, yeah, okay.
That's your current application. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Okay. And you state in that application, repair to an existing structure that had never went through permitting from previous owner, correct?
yes,
Okay. And I think I heard you say earlier today that there was a side structure on the building that suffered some severe damage and the roof came down?
and also the other side that is part of the top view that you have there, part of that roof came down too, which caused us to put new trusses on.
Okay, so is it your testimony that there was an existing addition to this building that suffered some kind of damage that you then are in need of repairing right now?
Well, yes, it was already completed. Not completed, but it was made safe.
Okay, well, let's look at some pictures first, and then we'll circle back. You testified a little earlier about the accuracy of the pictures in the application from November 2021. We can take a look at page 67 of
Wait,
Exhibit.
hold on. I'm not saying that. That was part of the listing for the property, those pictures that you showed me. So I did not say that.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the pictures, and I can ask you some questions about, let me ask you this. You did see the building at around the time that you purchased it, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to tell me whether these pictures are consistent with your understanding and memory of the building at that time. So on page 67 of Exhibit A, if I could draw your attention in particular, the second row, the last picture, and the third row, the second and third picture. Do those appear to be accurate depictions of the building at around the time that you purchased the property?
if you look very close on the third picture down, there's a fence around, you can't really see it, but there was a shower there that was later closed in.
There was a shower? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, not by me, but, so this is the area where we're talking about. So this picture at the time was not accurate.
How big was this shower?
There was a fenced-in area, and then he later closed it in. I don't know, because it's gone now. That was part of the structure that fell down.
Okay.
And then the left wall, or the right wall that you're seeing there, block there had fallen down too, and part of that roof.
Okay, let's look at a few more pictures. Hopefully it'll make it a little more clear. Let's just look at a couple pictures, and these are from Google Earth, and I can provide the board with a citation for recognizing Google Earth not as being hearsay and a legitimate source of pictures. If we look at Exhibit E and F, Exhibit E, if you look in the upper left-hand corner, is a picture dated from 7/2010 and depicts the West End Drive picture in the upper right quadrant of the picture, of the image. And Exhibit F is dated from November of 2021. And the West End Drive image at about the same scale is also in the upper right-hand quadrant of the picture. If we take a look at Exhibit K, this is a Google Earth picture as well from the 2019 timeframe, and I'm making these representations to you, board, because I went onto Google Earth and obtained these pictures. It's also an exercise we could do here live, but I know the internet's kind of bad and sketchy. But Exhibit K is a closer up image of that side of the building. I think you were saying, Mr. Pugliano, that there was a shower there on that side. Is the side we're looking at on Exhibit K the side where there was, where you're testifying there was some kind of a building collapse?
On the right side, when you're looking, or the side closest to you, where there's that bump out, that was the shower area that he later closed in, and it went up about 7 feet. That part fell down, and that block wall cracked and had some block falling out of it. Also next to that, the roof, the first part of the roof where you see that it looks like a slice in it. If you come 10 feet over from there, that roof came in.
Okay, but
There was a
then,
lean-to roof on the side where the shower was. I don't know what the exact measurement was or anything. I can't answer that because I never, as I told Ms. Ross, I never took pictures of any of this stuff beforehand. The only thing I did show pictures of is about the block breaking down and collapsing.
and again, the block breaking down and collapsing, you're referring to this outdoor shower area?
Yeah, the block wall it's up against. Yes.
Okay, so the outdoor shower area is kind of affixed to the exterior side wall on the, I get my east and west wrong, but I think is that the east side of the property? Okay, the one closest to us in the picture in Exhibit K. You're talking about that wall suffering some damage
And the roof, yes.
and that roof?
Yes.
Okay.
Not to interrupt, but was the red roof damaged? If we're
Yes.
looking at that picture, the red roof.
Yes.
In this picture, that red roof was damaged.
Yes.
And the brick wall behind the white triangle was also damaged?
Yes.
Okay.
And sorry, what year was this Exhibit K again? Doesn't,
2019.
okay, thanks.
Now, let's just take a look briefly, please, at Exhibit G and H. Mr. Pugliano, are these Exhibit G and Exhibit H, are these accurate depictions of your property around this time?
Yes.
Okay. And there's a whole addition to the building that's currently covered in some ever-built siding. That's all a new addition, correct?
The extension of the roof over the block, whenever we put the trusses on, engineering-wise, it was raised 42 inches. That side part, about, I'm going to say 8 or 12 feet was added, yes, to the existing that had that lean-to portion that had fallen down. But that roof line was carried across, and that is from the new portion to the end of the block where you see the white paper meeting it. That is the portion that was lifted up, that was raised 42 or 48 inches higher. And that's all new trusses, and it was just dried in so that no further no damage was done to what was done.
Okay, so and let's just look at the door as a reference point. Let's look at Exhibit G and Exhibit K, where we can see that door to orient everybody. There's only about a couple feet from that door to what was the edge of this building, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And now, if we look at Exhibit G, there is an existing, I'm going to call it 20 feet, and I'll show you some site plan documents that I think will support that. 20 feet existing or added to the building, as well as it looks like, and you went up, I think you said 42 inches because the roof was damaged, correct? Okay. So laterally, we have about 20 feet added to the building, and we also have about 42 inches added to the existing roof line. So it went up about 42 inches, correct?
Only in one area.
Just in the area that we see in Exhibit G?
Yes.
Okay. And does that allow for 2 separate floors in that building now?
There already was. That's what I was trying to establish before. There were offices here previously. Regardless of what that letter said, there was offices, there was 2 offices in there, and there was 3 bathrooms.
Okay, but you'd agree with me that neither the 2004 approval nor the approval that you
Yeah,
all
I
received in...
agree with you, but I'm just telling you what was in there. You're showing me pictures, and I'm explaining to you what was in there.
Okay, so just to be clear, though, the 04 and the 21 approvals did not grant a use for an office space in either of those approvals, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so in this entire, let's call it an addition, that we're looking at in Exhibit G, that entire addition space, there are 2 floors included in that addition, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And just so the dimensions are clear for this board, let's take a look at Exhibit J. Oh, and I'm sorry, before I move on to that, the 2 pictures that were taken were taken from a Cecil Township enforcement officer. If there is any need to have him testify as to the authenticity, I will, but I believe that Mr. Pugliano already said that they accurately depict the property as it currently stands. But for
And
the
so
record,
noted.
thank you. Let's take a look at Exhibit J, please. It's a 2-page document. And I will represent the second page of the document, Mr. Pugliano. This is the site plan that you submitted to Cecil Township recently, I think just last week. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I will represent to this board that the first page of that document is the same site plan. I zoomed in on it so that you could read the wording because it was very small. So if we look at Exhibit J, the first page, it references an existing building, the length of which is 130.6 feet. And this building is indicated as 32.7 feet wide. And I'm sorry, before I even ask that question, Mr. Hartman, is that, the Hartman Group, is that your engineer?
Yes.
Okay. And they drew up these plans?
Harshman.
Harshman, I'm sorry, you're correct. I was reading it upside down. This is your engineer, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And they drew up these plans on behalf of the entity, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this was for the purpose of submitting a site plan to Cecil Township, correct?
Correct.
And that's because the zoning officer sent you a notice of violation and informed you that you had to submit a site plan and get approvals and permits before you did anything, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let's just go back to that image again, the first page, which is easier to read. And again, for the record, the existing building is indicated at 130.6 feet long, 32.7 feet wide. And then there's a line here that says 20-foot addition under construction, correct? And that's 20 feet wide and 32.7 feet long. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, we had to reference that whole space because there was never any record of it, the existing stuff that was there. So when you're reading 20-foot addition, that is the overall area, yes. But it was referenced as incorporating that whole area because there was no record of it.
Right, so no record of it, but also no pictures depicting it, correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Yes, is that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and in fact, we just saw some pictures that showed the building over the years and did not have a 20-foot addition off of the side. The pictures we just looked at, right?
Right.
Okay. So this is a 20-foot addition, meaning it's a new piece of the building.
Yes, okay, so we've established that there's a 20-foot addition on it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted that to be clear for the record. Okay, and this space, the 20-foot addition, again, it's 20 by 32.7, and there are 2 floors, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and what's the purpose of this addition?
Potential expansion?
Okay, expansion for what purpose?
To be able to operate our business?
For warehousing and storage or for some other use?
For future use.
Okay, future warehousing and storing use or?
No, I mean, for future use if we ever get approved to move our office there.
Okay, so the addition in particular is being built for office space?
The bottom part is an extension of the warehouse, and the top part could potentially be used as warehouse or office.
Okay. And you have not yet received zoning approval for the addition, is that correct?
Correct.
And you've not yet received a building permit then for the addition?
Correct.
Okay. And you were told to stop work from the township zoning officer, is that fair?
Yes.
And are you aware that there are zoning provisions to address the physical expansion of a building when there's nonconforming use?
Until I came here, I didn't even know what that meant, but yes, go ahead.
Okay. And in argument or in summation at the end, I will point the board to those provisions, but for the record at this point, it is Section 1802 of the ordinance and allows for a non-conforming building to be expanded by 15% of the space occupied at the effective date of the adoption of the ordinance. And there are certain provisions that it must meet in addition to the percentage increase that's allowed under the ordinance. And in particular, those additional provisions allow that in the case of a commercial and industrial use, the expansion of the nonconforming building or use is necessitated by natural growth of the trade. And also, that's subsection 2, also under subsection 6, no new nonconforming use is added to the premises.
Those conditions are so noted.
Thank you. Okay, so, and I want to wrap this up very quickly. I want to get some figures just into the record. And actually, this might be helpful. Well, I think we've established that additional 20 by 32.7 is a new space, and therefore, the existing space before that addition was added, the length and width of the building were 130 feet by the 32.7. And if you calculate the area with the existing building before the addition, it's 4,270 square feet. And I think we just heard that the addition today that's being discussed is 20 feet by 32.7, and it's 2 floors, which would be 640 feet per floor, which would be another 1,280 square feet. Do you have any other drawings by an architect or an engineer related to the site plan or any more details about the addition itself?
No.
Okay. And just to be clear, on your application, when you said repair to an existing structure, that's not completely accurate, is it? This is an addition.
No, it is not totally an addition. It is not.
Okay, but
Part of it is, yes, the lifting it up 42 inches, it already was previously 2 floors, the roof was cantered in, so it was by lifting the sides up that allowed it to have the same head space as the rest of it. So whenever you were saying in addition to 2 floors, I don't know how to answer that if it truly is 2 floors, because it always was 2 floors on that side. It's just the end gables were lifted 42 inches, so it didn't come in when you came up the steps. There was already steps there. So no, it is not all 100% an addition. No, I will not say that's accurate.
okay, well, let's take a look again. Exhibit G. The distance from where the new ever-built side, so we have let's orient ourselves again. There's the door, and then there's a couple feet of cinder block, and then there's the ever-built siding.
This was reframed. You're looking at a picture of something that was reframed and tied all back together and then papered. This is not all, this was not all new. That's what I was trying to tell you about. 10 to 12 feet of it was. This was later closed in. That whole shower area was closed in. It was about 2 foot setback from the front, and there was a lean-to roof on it. You do not have a picture of that.
Do you have a
I
picture
do
of that,
not.
sir?
No, but I'm testifying to what was there, just like
Okay.
you're testifying. So I'm just telling you what was there.
Yeah.
And you're going by Google Earth and everything else, and, I believe that I'm permitted to tell you what was there since you were never there. I'm telling you that there was a second floor on this building. Now, the pictures of the original building doesn't show that separation because there was 42 inches added onto it. But the inside here, prior to putting this 42 inches on here, was over 12 foot tall. It was 14 or something like that. So there were steps to go up to the second floor of this, where there were offices. So whether I'm saying something right or wrong in your eyes, I'm just giving you a visual picture of what was here, instead of looking at Google Earth, just showing you a down image. So that's really all I have to say about that, and I really don't want to keep on doing this back and forth. So I just gave you an overview of what we did and what was there previously, and that's all I can do.
Understood.
And I don't have Google Earth to see through the building to show you that.
Understood. And I hear your testimony. I'm not here to testify. I'm here to ask you questions and find out what your testimony is under oath. And I think the board can look at the pictures to see the difference in the height of the building, the roof line, and the addition part of the building. Just one more exhibit I'd like to put into evidence to show the structure, at least at the time it was transferred. And this is just the Washington County Property Assessment Database website. The website's listed on the bottom. But I will give this to each of you. This particular image shows the warehouse as it existed at the time of the transfer, which was 130 feet long. And I think you can see by looking at Exhibit J that it's now the 130 feet plus 20 additional feet in length. So I'd just like to enter that into evidence as well, and we'll do that as Exhibit L.
And when was this based off of?
That is there's a date on that. It's the Washington County Property Assessment Database. It indicates First Choice Heating, Plumbing, and Cooling, Inc. as the owner of the property. And this was at the time of your transfer.
That's what I'm asking you. So somebody was physically out here and measured this prior to the time of transfer? Because I know in Allegheny County, the pictures that are on the Allegheny County website are, might be accurate, might not be accurate of what we have.
Yeah, I'm not here to testify about what it is or isn't. I don't work for them. This is the Washington County Property Assessment Database image of the square footage of the property. And I think if you compare that to Exhibit J, you'll see that there is, the addition is indeed additional space to help clarify that issue for the board.
And I think we've heard testimony stating that of the 20 feet by 32.7 feet, 12 feet of that 20 is newly added space.
I heard a lot of different testimony. I would just ask the board to look at Exhibit J, the zoomed-in version, which indicates that there was a building that was 130.6 feet, which is consistent with the Washington County database image of the building, and that the addition on Exhibit J is indeed 20 feet by 32.7.
So I would revise my previous comment to state the new addition is 20 feet by 30.7 feet, not 12 feet by 30.7 feet, and it is 2 floors of additional new space.
Again, I cannot testify, but that's my understanding from what I heard from the applicant.
And that's my understanding also.
So at this time, I would just like to move into evidence Exhibits A through L on behalf of the township.
Do you have any objections to these being put into evidence? I know it's kind of,
I
but
didn't know I was here officially testifying to anything, so no, I don't have any objections. I was not aware that this is what was happening tonight.
Can someone confirm, is there an Exhibit I? So I don't have one in my binder.
I did remove that, so there is no Exhibit I. Thank you for that clarification. At this time, on behalf of the township, I have no further questions for the applicant. Okay, and I don't have any other witnesses to call. If you'd like to give me the opportunity to summarize, I can, or I could do that in writing. It's up to the board.
I think a brief summary would be helpful,
Okay,
just an executive summary verbally.
sure, thank you. So I think there are two issues here before the board today, not both of which were set forth in the application, but I think two separate issues have been fleshed out. One of which is an actual expansion or a change in a pre-existing non-conforming use that this board previously acknowledged. So the applicant was before this board in December. This board acknowledged a very specific pre-existing non-conforming use of storage and warehousing. That was consistent with the 2004 board, which found something very similar when that owner changed hands, and they were essentially got a blessing to continue the pre-existing non-conforming use of storage and warehousing. The issue of office use, while it may have been raised, was never a finding by either board, so it was not an allowed use. As you know, this is a residentially zoned parcel. There are residential homes near this parcel. What I heard in terms of use from the applicant is actually not a natural expansion of a use. It's not an expansion that is allowed under Section 1802. It's actually adding an additional use. It's adding a use that has more severity than what is currently there and what has been approved by boards over the years to be there. So that's the first issue, which is an 1802 use issue. The second issue is an expansion of the building that housed the pre-existing non-conforming use. Under your ordinance, and ordinances are allowed to do this, you have an actual percentage increase that is allowed when you want to physically expand a building for that use. First of all, the expansion needs to be for the recognized pre-existing non-conforming use. That expansion cannot be to add a new use, and that's clear from your ordinance. But that particular provision, I believe this addition exceeds what is allowed. And my understanding under the case law is that if you even wanted to exceed, if you want to exceed what is allowed under the ordinance, you would then need to have to come in and get a variance to do that, none of which is before you at this time. Again, what was before you in the application was a repair to a building. I don't think that a building was being repaired. I believe that there was a new addition added to the building. It's new space, and I believe you should be going through the process of calculating that space and comparing it to the ordinance to see if it exceeds the percentage increase that is allowed in your ordinance. And again, I would just caution you that increased space, again, needs to be tethered by the fact that you can't add a new use to that space. And I believe we heard testimony that it's not only an increase in the warehouse space, but it's also adding an additional use onto the building. So at this point, the township does have oppositions to both the use as well as the building addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Does legal counsel for the zoning hearing board have any questions or comments?
I do not. Give me 1 second.
Just one moment, please. And do the members of the committee have any questions?
I do have a quick question. There was nothing presented about the results of the rezoning request. Is there any detail you can provide on why that rezoning request was denied?
So just so the record's clear, I think he did admit that it was denied, as you know. In terms of why, I can't sit here and say why it was requested.
So we don't know if it would be spot zoning or anything like that as a result of that. I'm just curious.
My recollection is that the board well, of course, they have the legislative ability to rezone or not rezone, and they decided not to rezone this to a commercial parcel of property.
Okay.
When did the damage to the building originally occur, temporarily speaking? Date, time?
I believe that it was in the later part of April it started, the leaks. The actual damage was sometime in the beginning of May. I don't have like I said, I wasn't prepared for this at all.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to get an idea of timing from last November until now. And the structural repairs that were done to the building and the increase in height, was that from a structural engineering point necessary to maintain the integrity of the remainder of the structure, not including the addition?
The height difference was
So you
not,
raised
was
up
not
that 42
necess-
inches?
It was not necessary, no.
Okay.
It was not. That 42 or 48 inches was not necessary to maintain the structural integrity.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from counsel for zoning hearing board?
Yes, I'm looking at Exhibit L, and it looks like it's 110 feet of warehouse, 20 feet of office for a total of 130 feet, which is the original building. And you testified earlier that there were 2 floors in the pre-remodeled building, correct?
In the area where you see office is where they had stairs and there was a second floor on that side, not on the warehouse side, because am I coming through this?
Yeah.
The warehouse side, I think the ceilings are somewhere around 14 feet in the warehouse side. So the other side previously, they had stick-built trusses, and there was a second floor that was approximately 7.5 feet tall in the center, and then as you went out to the ends, they tapered down the sides. So there was 2 offices upstairs, and there was 2 offices downstairs with 3 bathrooms.
In this area,
The side where they're calling office, yes.
and you've added, or would like to add 20 feet to this. And have you raised this entire office area 42 inches?
Yes,
And then another 20 feet out?
yes, yes.
Wait, is it another 20 feet out, or is it another 8 to 12 feet out? Because I thought originally you said it was 8 to 12 out.
No, we added additional to what was there existing. So
So
that picture that you're looking at from Washington County is the existing.
But this part right here
Yes,
is 20 feet?
yes.
Okay. I was under the impression you said it was between 8 and 12 feet.
Yeah, and I think I had made comment bringing up that discrepancy earlier, that it's not 12 feet by 30.7, it's 20 feet by 30.7, and it's 2 floors.
Yes.
floors.
And the reference to the 12 or 8 feet, whatever it was what was existingly taken down. And that is now one area.
In an attempt to clarify this, so what we're saying is that in addition to this 130 feet, there was a poorly constructed addition that no longer exists.
Correct.
That bumped out another 8 to 12 feet
It
or
was,
so.
yeah, it was either 8 or 12 feet. I don't recall that.
And was it the entire 32 feet deep and however tall?
No,
like-
it was about 7 feet shy of the front with a lean-to roof, like a barn, no, not a barn roof, but yeah, like a barn roof, a shed roof.
Was it made of brick like the rest of the building?
No,
If relief was granted, what is the maximum number of cars that would be in the parking lot at most?
well, we have cars there that are parked that we don't use on a daily basis, so do you want me to include those?
Break it down for us, give us as
Okay,
much
so-
information as you can.
We have 3 vehicles there that do not leave the lot daily. They're special use vehicles. We have,
Are they trucks, are they?
yes, they're trucks.
Pickup trucks?
One is a larger dump truck, one is a stake body, and one is a van.
Okay.
On that property, we also have 2 covered trailers and three just regular flat trailers. And that's what's there daily unless they're out on a job.
Okay.
We've been trying to keep any machinery we have on the inside, but we do have 3 or 4 excavators.
Okay.
Daily, I have a vehicle there, and our manager has a vehicle there. In future, if it were permitted, we have 1 other office personnel that works for us.
So right now you have 2 cars there on a daily basis for employees.
Yes,
And if relief was granted, you'd have no more than 3 cars
yes,
on a daily basis.
yeah, because
What
we
about
have,
employees?
Huh?
What about other employees, your field employees?
I mean, if they came in to get material, but mostly we deliver the material out. But, I mean, staying for a long period of time, that doesn't happen at our current situation, and we've been there for 12 years.
Just, so those 14 employees don't come to your site, they go to the job?
Yes. I mean, they'll come in occasionally, like I said, if they have to grab something or if they're grabbing blueprints. But to come there and be there for any length of time, more than a half an hour to an hour, it does not happen.
Is the only entrance to your property via Hooks Lane? Is that what it's called?
West End Drive.
West End Drive.
But then we turn right here?
Yeah, it stays west.
Okay.
They took that bridge out there on the South Fayette side. The road now ends here and just comes like this. This is no longer
Okay.
in existence.
Oh, I see, it's pretend, okay.
Any other questions by council?
No.
Any other questions by members of the zoning hearing board?
So it currently at McKees Rocks, the 14 employees, they don't have any other occasion to come to the building to pick up their check or to do other things like that. How does that equipment that's needed, like that you're storing there, get to a job? Do they have to come pick up that equipment to take it to a job?
Either myself or the other manager delivers
Okay.
it.
And you purchased the property in November 2021, is that correct?
No, we closed on it the day before New Year's Eve, I believe.
Okay, in 2021?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. But yeah.
Okay, December 2021. So I just have, I guess regarding this, part that's not there anymore that you took down, like I'm looking at this picture from 2019, and then I'm looking at this picture, and I'm not seeing where there could have been another extension that you took down. That's what I'm confused about that. I don't understand, because this looks like there's maybe, I don't know, like 3 or 4 feet in between the door and the new part, right? This looks like there's about 3 or 4 feet between the door and the end of the building. So I guess you're talking about another extension that was damaged that you took down. That's why I'm just trying to understand what the true size of the addition is. So is it?
The true size is 20 feet because that's what's there now. I cannot present anything to
Okay.
you about that side other than there is a picture that shows what was previously there, which was a fenced-in shower outside. But I can't,
Okay,
give you
that's
anything
fine.
else.
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that you weren't saying like you tore down something else there. That was previous, right?
I did,
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay. But we don't have any pictures of that.
correct. That's why I said it
Okay,
is
I
20
see.
feet.
So is it fair to say for sure that the size of the addition is a 20 feet by 32.7 feet addition? That would equal 654 feet. And if we multiply that times 2, it's like 1,300 feet of an addition. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any other comments or testimony from the audience?
May, just one more comment. I did just hear some testimony about exterior storage of equipment and vehicles, et cetera. If you look at your approval and the approval before that, it was very specific as to, no outdoor storage. So there's certainly concern by the township as to whether this is becoming a contractor's yard, which is only allowed in industrial districts. So as you go through your deliberations, we just ask you to consider that as well.
I'd like to speak on that. The township did know that because when I was in front of the Board of Supervisors with the commercial zoning, there was 2 people on the board that knew exactly what Mr. Gaglia did because they made comments. If you go back to, if this is all recorded, if you go back to it, you had 2 different people saying that he had 12 trucks outside, and she was there for that. So Cecil Township did know that there was vehicles outside. I was never told that we couldn't have vehicles outside. They're not even viewable by any of the houses because of how our property is situated.
Okay.
I have one more question for Liz, maybe, or Chris. Is there any condition under which we would permit office space as an authorized use in R3 if it's not attached to a home?
Can you say that one more time?
Is there any situation that we would permit a structure to be used for office space, with the exception of if it's a home office use that's associated? Like in this case in particular, it's not a home, it's a building. Is there any situation in R3 that we allow for use in a non-residence of office space in R3? Am I making sense? Sorry.
Right, I just need to pull up
Yeah.
the ordinance.
That's what I'm doing as well.
I do have a copy of your use schedule table, that is helpful, and I do not see any. I will note for the record that you define contractor's office separate and distinct from a contractor's yard in your ordinance, and I'm not saying this was approved as a contractor's yard, but those 2 are considered separate and distinct uses, so I think that analogy would cross over to something like this, like this is a table of authorized uses.
Thank you.
And we're waiting response from the zoning officer and/or council. Counsel for the zoning hearing board.
All I see is home office.
Yeah, I don't see any office space approval in R3, aside from home office. There's a special exception for a home occupation, but nothing commercial in nature.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? I'd entertain a motion from the members of the zoning hearing board. I'll make a motion to move that we approve the application to renovate, repair a building on the property and permit the property to be used to operate their business out of the property as described in the application and explained at the hearing, because a similar pre-existing non-conforming use exists at the property. That use has not been abandoned, and that the proposed use by the applicant is in keeping with the previous owner's pre-existing non-conforming use. Moreover, the proposed use is equal to or less severe than the current owner's pre-existing non-conforming use. This approval is subject to the following conditions. A, no more than 3 office staff at the same time on the property. B, hours of operation be between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yes.
C, no customers of First Choice, Inc. would come to the West End Drive McDonald location. D, that a maximum of 3 cars be parked on the property. And E, field workers must stay in the warehouse portion of the property. Any revisions to that? If not, I would look for a second to the motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Yes, please.
Address the outside storage, which you put the parking in that was more storage. You have to reiterate that the outdoor storage is going to be a condition.
To the extent, that condition still stands. That has nothing to do with, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? That's still a valid condition, and
He already says he's using it for outdoor storage.
that's a zoning office. That's an enforcement issue, right? I mean, if it's a condition and a condition's not being followed, that's enforcement. We're not modifying that condition.
We've heard a motion. There's a second to the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
So it is approved with 2 favorable votes and 1 negative vote.
Thank you. May I ask a question, though?
Yes, please.
The outside storage, meaning of vehicle, like my impression of storage is something that's permanently fixed. Is that not fair? Storage to me would be if we had a Connex box there. Broke down vehicles, trailers that didn't move. These are things that, you know, come out, in and out, not every day, but I was just wondering for clarification about the outside storage.
Can you address that?
I'm imagining that's going to be a question for another day.
Okay.
Ms.
That-
Ross,
that-
if you have anything to add, but.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk to you about it, you know, afterwards. I also would assume that no outdoor storage would mean no outdoor storage, meaning that the equipment and materials for your business should all be kept inside in the warehouse. That being said, I know that legally there are other things for trailers and, you know, vehicles, you know, that are moving, like the trailer I know is one specifically. So I would probably get a legal opinion and talk to you about the outdoor storage aspect.
Okay.
So we'll have clarification on that as we continue.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. We have, next item of new business is application number 2022-0013, Sam White, location 224 Francis Lane, McDonald, and it's a request for variance to construct a deck within the required front yard setback. If the applicant could come forward and identify themselves by name and address, please.
Yes, it's Sam White, 320 Terrace Avenue, Washington, PA. So we'd like approval to construct a deck that, to my understanding of this lot plan, encroaches the setback by approximately 2 feet because it is a corner lot.
I think Liz will help you with the diagram and the request for variance.
Liz, do you confirm that this is at 2.5 feet based on the drawing? I'm just curious because it doesn't appear to be 2.5 feet based on what I'm looking at. It looks like more like 9 feet variance.
So on the drawing, it states 4 feet past the house, which on the drawing, as far as I understand, it has a 25-foot building line and a 26 and a half, roughly, setback, to a 1.5 foot difference from the 4 feet, so 2.5 feet.
So the variance request is for 2.5 feet.
Yes.
And I think you've outlined in the application the physical condition of the house restricts the ability to develop the deck in strict conformity with the zoning ordinance.
Yes. The opposite side of the deck, which I believe is pictured, has a cantilevered fireplace with an exhaust unit. For safety reasons, don't want to put the deck where anybody can reach the exhaust unit.
And I think another unique characteristic is this is a corner lot.
Yes.
Is there anyone present who's a neighbor, or do you have feedback from neighbors?
We do have a whole list of neighbors, which I believe is in here.
Yes.
Laurie Figgins, 224 Francis Lane, McDonald. Oh, sorry. Laurie Figgins, can you hear me? 224 Francis Lane. Figgins,
If you could spell it for the
F is-
stenographer.
F is in Frank, Iggins.
Thank you.
I do not have any neighbors here, no. I have discussed it with my neighbors, but they're not here.
Any positive, negative feedback?
Positive, it's a new housing plan, so we all share with one another what we're gonna build, what colors and how we're gonna build the steps or not build the steps, so they are aware.
Is there any type of HOA?
There is, the HOA approved it.
They did approve it?
Based on zoning.
So I'm still confused at the drawing here, and maybe it's just getting late, but in this case, is the building setback line the same, the building line same as the setback line where it says it's 26.5 feet? Am I reading that in the drawing correctly?
So the building setback line is 25 feet in McConnell's Trails. It's a PRD, so
Okay.
their zoning's
Okay,
a little
all
different.
right. I was
than
looking at 35.
regular
Okay,
R2.
thank you, that helps.
Since it's
Yes,
that corner
I was gonna
lot, the
mention on the-
25-foot setback applies
agenda.
to the front and the
It's
back.
at 35, which would not be possible here.
All right, thank
Yes,
you.
I was
Yeah.
going to say then the building was in violation to
Right.
begin with, so we have a different problem, but,
All right,
okay.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Can you submit a copy of the approval from the HOA to Liz for the record, please?
I thought it was in here. If it's not, we can submit it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the zoning board members? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that I move that we grant the request for a 2.5-foot dimensional variance so the applicant may construct a deck as depicted in the application and explained at the hearing, and contingent upon providing the letter from the HOA, please.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. Congratulations and good luck to you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we have application number 2022-0014, Erica Warbeck, and that's at location 134 Wilson Avenue in Cecil Township, pertinent to request for variance to install a 5-foot-high fence in front yard to accommodate horses.
That's correct, sir. I have a presentation here. Is there any way that I can plug in?
Oh, you do? Okay.
This is really tall for me. I feel like I'm gonna, like Steven Tyler here. My name is Erica, and this is my son here, my son Nash. And we're here today to ask for, thank you so much. We're here today to request for a variance. There's a current variance for a 3-foot-high fence in the front yard of your property. And we purchased 134 Wilson Avenue. Before even coming with my real estate agent, I called beforehand and asked whether or not I had done research and found that we could have horses there. And I'll give you a little background in terms of why that was so important to me. But the ask here is that we have a 5-foot fence. The home was built in 1900 and was a farmhouse. The fence that we intend to use is traditional in terms of the time period for which the horse, it's a farmhouse that was built in 1900. It's a board and batten construction, so we would keep in terms, we would want to keep it looking as authentic as we possibly could. Unfortunately, the way our house is laid out, the house is all the way back on the property, and so unfortunately, all of the land that we have to be able to use is in the front yard. To explain a little bit, I know there have been a lot of questions because we put up the letters for the dressage ring. I ride combined training. It's considered, and I know there's a lot of barrel racers out there that would have, argue with me, but it's considered the hardest, most complete test for a horse rider. It originated as a test of endurance, agility, and obedience for both the rider and the horse, and it was started by the English cavalry. It was adopted as a sport in the Olympics in 1912 in the Stockholm Games. The combined training rally, or 3-day event, is a multi-day competition, and it's composed of 3 very specific portions. The first which is dressage. That's why we have the letters and the ring that we're going to have that is very it's about 18 inches off the ground. The intent there is to show the partnership between the horse and the rider, and everything is supposed to be absolutely seamless. If you've watched the Olympics ever and you've seen the horses dance where they do the things where they're crossing, that's what I do, part of it. And so we will be doing that in the front yard if we get the okay. The second part is cross country. It is my favorite part of the competition. We go very, very fast and we jump very big jumps. So the course is 22 fences. In my division, I jump fences that are